I'm Zachary Cava. I'm a video platform architect over at Hulu. And one of the things that I do at Hulu is actually interface with the various standards groups. And one particular group, CTA Wave, is a great group. It is the focus of web applications for the video ecosystem. And one of the things that Wave is really big on is, evangelizing kind of the usage of CMAF in our video streaming applications. And there's a lot of work being done to describe how to do a well-formed CMAF presentation, how to bring that to your system. But there's still two common forms of distribution for CMAF presentations, Dash and HLS. And it's actually very common in the industry for people to be producing both of these formats. And a common question that's coming up is, how can I produce a presentation that is usable in both a Dash manifest and an HLS manifest? And also I want to enable ad insertion and low latency live streaming and a bunch of different use cases. And so we've taken to task and created a group called the Dash HLS Interop group. And the goal of this is to take the MPEG Dash defined binding to CMAF and the HLS defined binding for CMAF, and then analyze a number of use cases that are common in the industry. And so far we've highlighted video on demand streaming, live streaming, low latency live streaming, the interleaving of presentations to perform things like program change or ad insertion. And we are going to dive into the details of what the CMAF presentation looks like to support these use cases and how these are represented when both the respective Dash to HLS format, but then what constraints you need to apply to the presentation authoring to interoperably create a Dash and HLS presentation from the same CMAF presentation. And this, we feel this is a need that the industry has today and is going to continue to have and grow in need as features and complexity continue to enter the ecosystem. And so we want to kind of get to the forefront of that. We do realize that there's likely gaps between the specifications where a feature is supported in one manifest format, not the other. We also want to act as a kind of liaison and pose the question to the respective specification holders of how such support can be done. And so, we really want to make it easy for somebody to deploy CMAF to the widest ecosystem of devices as possible, using the commonality of manifest formats that do exist today. And so I just wanted to highlight what that is. I don't have a document to share with you just yet because we've literally just kind of had our initial working group call today. But I do expect this to iterate fairly quickly. If you are interested, please feel free to message me and talk or join the CTA Wave group. Definitely happy to talk on the side if you have questions or comments. We really do want to hear from you in the industry. Are you looking to adopt CMAF and have questions of how you would represent aspects of it in a manifest, or are you heavy on one manifest form but you need to adopt another, and you've heard CMAF will solve problems but you don't see how it will? What use cases do you have in your content deployments that you would like to deploy across these forms? We're looking for this feedback so that we're properly addressing the needs of the industry and not just creating another spec for spec's sake, right? Because it's very easy to write specifications. It's very hard to write useful specifications. I think anyone that's had to read things would appreciate that comment. But yeah, so if I know we've got a varying group of folks here on the call from a number of different companies. I'm really willing to hear and open to hear all of your use cases, your scenarios. So please feel free to email me. I'll drop my email in the chat here, and you can also contact me on Video Dev Slack. But yeah, that's kind of it. Very short, very compact.
Thanks, Zach. And if people are not members of -IF, that's okay.
So this is actually through CTA Wave.
I'm sorry, through CTA. Yeah.
It completely fine to talk to me. I will flow information back into the group. I'm acting as the chair for the group. So it's important to get the feedback from the industry. We would encourage the joining of the CTA Wave group, but of course, I want to hear from everyone so I can.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Hey, Andy.
So the head of R&D at Unified, Rufel, just went on vacation. What's the name of the group?
HLS Interop group.
He'll ask for it by name, I'm sure.
Yeah, he was actually on the call this morning, so he was avoiding his vacation to help the Interop concerns. It was a very good show.
Well, he's not going to go very far on vacation anyway. No one can.
Yeah, I mean, I assume he went from the room on the left side of the house to the room on the right.
So Zach, this is John Simmons. One of the things that we talked about on the call this morning was the tools for conversion from Dash to HLS and vice versa, and tests that could verify that you've produced content that will work in both Dash and HLS. So do you have any thoughts on that you could share with the group?
Yes, John, thank you for that question. And I completely forgot. So definitely, one of the aspects of success that we're measuring here is that given the constraints we're coming up with, you should be able to have an automated way of converting between the two manifest formats. And that is to say, not only you should be able to do conversion, you should be able to confirm conformance. And so while one critical aspect of the group will be a specification, another aspect will be actual production of tools to aid these to aid both the translation between the two and give an example of how to do that, but also to help verify conformance and transform just a generic CMAP presentation into these various manifest forms. Likely the tooling will be just as important, if not more important, than the specification itself, because it'll give the industry a practical implementation of this functionality.
Great.
Zach,
Thanks, Zach.
do you think the CTA Wave is gonna go the way of creating profiles for manifests? Because up to now, CTA just managed to keep outside of this business. So how do you see the validation tools if there is no profile for that?
It's a really good question. I'm not 100% sure the way we'd go about doing that just yet, especially when you think about something like HLS, which does not have a concept of profile, right? But I'm sure we'll discuss it, and if you have input and thoughts, I'd love to hear it. I'm not 100% sure how authoritative a brand, like a compatibility brand, would be on the CMAP boxes, but it's a good point to discuss and think about.
Okay, thanks.
Zach, this is John. In the Dash IF specification for add insertion, does that define a new profile for Dash?
It does. It defines it at the Dash level. It defines a restricted set of, sorry, not restricted set, a mandatory set of elements and attributes in order to properly describe both a add insertion enableable stream as well as well-formed stored add content. Yeah.
Yeah, I bring that up because I know that ad insertion was one of the maybe not the first, but one of the more pressing use cases. People were wanting to see compatibility between HLS and Dash, and that some of the work that was done in CTA Wave last year on how to manage multi-period Dash and making it compatible with HLS. In a sense, it is profiling Dash, but at the CMAF level, not at the content level, not at the manifest level.
And I think ad insertion is probably ad insertion and DRM are likely the two, or not DRM, content encryption are likely the two cases where there are significant restrictions that might be placed on the overall structure of the byte streams to enable clean splice points or commonality of encryption keys, that type of thing. And that's where the possibility of an additive descriptor is likely necessary, or some additional carried metadata to distinguish points that can be used for asset splicing, that type of thing. This is something definitely we discovered on the Dash side. We solved it in a Dash way of carrying it in the event stream, and in the Dash HLS Interop group, we're going to have to broaden the scope or broaden the perspective to understand, okay, from a CMAF construct level, is this something that should be signaled, and how should it be signaled? And then how do we carry that up into the Dash and HLS manifest forms? Because that's really where you get to the point of multiple assets or multiple presentations, because CMAF is very centric on one timeline. And the manifests are where you're bringing in the complexity of multiple presentations interleaved, where there would be additional constraints across. Like maybe one of the things is there is no ability to do codec change in the most constricted profile, which is the highest level of interop. But in a less constricted profile, it is you can do codec change. That's not really a constraint on the CMAF presentation, but it's a constraint on how you bring those presentations together.
And it looks like Chris posted a link to the CTA Content Specification Task Force GitHub in the chat, so people can go and take a look at that. And Zach, I assume the spec will end up getting linked to there in some shape or form.
Yep. We're still working through all the details on how things link up.
I think Zach, didn't Alexandra create a new HLS Dash GitHub, or did she not?
We haven't created the GitHub yet. So for folks edification, the content specification task force was originally looking at this, and the Wave working group felt it was big enough to pull into its own area and a set of expertise focusing on it. And so we are in the process of spinning that out into its own thing. I think we'll leave a marker on the issues for CTA Wave content spec to pull over into the GitHub, but we're still in the process of spinning up all the appropriate constructs and folders and all that type of fun thing.
So Andy here, now that we're among friends, is Etche's work on the Dash Industry Forum Content Validator good enough, timely enough, far enough ahead to actually make your paperwork meaningful, or are you going to have to plow ahead and build your own validator?
I think, John, you have some thoughts on this one.
Yeah, well, the validator that is the Dash IF CMAF validator was actually built by CTA Wave. It was paid for by the CTA, but it was left in the same landing page, and so people tend to think it's the same thing, but in fact it's being driven by CTA. And this is more than a who paid for it thing. It's like, what were the requirements that went in creating it, and all the more detailed testing of all the different media profiles that are being published in Etsy and other places for CMAF. All of that was driven by CTA Wave. I'm hoping that what we'll see in the long term is all the things that Zach's coming up with in terms of this level of interoperability will also end up in that test infrastructure, and it probably will mean some additional tests that need to be added.